All right. We've been talking about building the next web. I'm excited to talk with Jesse from Finsweet. Jesse, we've known each other for quite a few years. It's been amazing to watch everything that Finsweet has been building. And I'm so excited to catch up and talk with you today. Um, I think my first question is just like, how are things at Finsweet? Like, what are you guys up to?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I wanted to say thanks for having me on. I personally have looked up to you and your team for since I've been at Finsweet. You guys have definitely been an example for us to follow, and in many ways. So grateful for the opportunity to catch up a little bit and chat about some exciting stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, for Finsweet, we're doing really well. I think just like everyone else, we're kind of figuring out how to navigate, what does it mean to, um, you know, take in agentic development,
Yeah.
both from an internal operation standpoint, and then also how do we incorporate that into our services? What does that mean, regarding tech stacks? How does that affect how we work with our clients? All that kind of stuff. So, that's of course something we're navigating, and I'm sure we'll get into some of the specifics of that. And then yeah, I think the big stuff in terms of maybe shifts for us
Mhm.
this year have been: one, we officially added a marketing team.
Oh,
So
wow.
believe it or not, we never had a marketing team
Yeah.
until January of this year, which is kind of insane to think about, considering all of the stuff we've put
Everything.
out online.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have
um,
set, I mean, just as a quick snapshot,
yeah,
it's funny, like, I've always felt like Finsweet has pushed the entire sort of like community to do better marketing. And definitely for like Edgar Allan and what we've done. I mean, everything from those early live streams to like how you've built and launched products. It's just been incredible. And so, yeah, I think you guys are a great group of sort of doing it right, right? And sort of like this better together mindset, which
hmm
I feel like isn't always out there. And I have a whole other tangent I want to go into about listicles and lies because man, there is like some listicles that are being put out there today, which are just not on the up and up. But yeah, just yeah, you guys have really done it well.
yeah, awesome. Well, kudos to the team. I didn't have a say in a lot of that, so that was a lot of the team behind the scenes kind of working.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably the one big shift for us this year. And then the other one, which I think we'll get into, is how we're thinking about products.
Mhm.
Agentic development has very clearly disrupted this space, at
Yep.
least for us. And so we're shifting some things on the product side of the business, and leaning in some ways, taking the foot off the gas in other areas.
Mhm.
So I think those are probably the two biggest things for us: is the addition of the marketing team, some shifts structurally in how we approach products, and then of course maybe if I would add a third is just globally thinking about how we incorporate AI into everything.
Amazing. Well, let's start with the agency. Like, what is? Maybe we'll start from the inside out. So you'd mentioned kind of maybe some processes and tooling. We're seeing the same type of thing.
Mhm.
And I mean, we were just talking before this, just you personally, working with your barber to build an application, right? And
Yeah,
kind of it's interesting growing up no code and sort of like, there was always the promise of being able to just like magically create stuff, but I think now that's more of a reality.
hmm
Um, we're thinking about applications almost as something that can be ephemeral, right? So it's just like you just build it and like maybe use it once and you're done. But like,
totally.
what are you guys building and kind of how are you incorporating that into your internal processes?
Yeah, I think we have seen basically two ways this comes to play.
Mm.
One is in the form of workflows that we're building that are pretty heavy reliant on AI.
Mm.
So we're building a lot of like Claude skills and stuff like that are either replacing manual workflows entirely
Mhm.
or automating a lot of it, where we still have a
Mhm.
bunch of human in the loop touch points. So that's one area. And it's been particularly helpful on the sales side of things,
Mhm.
as you can imagine. with just kind of like a lot of manual and
Yep.
you might know like sales tends to be a very kind of context driven
Yep.
exercise where you're trying to gather as much information as possible. And it just so happens that AI is really, really good when you give it a lot of context. So
Yep.
we've been able to lean on AI a lot in that way. And then the second area, which you mentioned a little bit, is actually building software for ourselves. So one that has been a clear win for us is within our marketing team, we built what we call Content Hub, and it's
Mm.
essentially a tool that we use to manage all of the production and then kind of scheduling out and tracking of our content for marketing. So it could be
Mm.
anything from social posts to blog type posts that are going to go on the website to new landing page copy, all of
Mm.
that kind of stuff. Anything that's new content that we're going to use in our marketing. We built this tool, and you know, y- you could build the tool in and of itself with AI, and that would be cool. But we've got some really smart people on the team, way smarter than me on some of this stuff, who actually built in like a custom agent,
Huh.
and we have custom like knowledge bases where all of things like our sales call transcripts um, go into. We even started recording little kind of like internal interviews with our team
Mm.
to answer some of the either search queries or keywords that we're trying to rank for, answer
Okay.
questions around a lot of those. And then
Mm.
those go into the knowledge base. And then we can have this agent then take and write, unique content that is
Mm.
from our team. It's not just like
Sure. Yeah.
AI recreating AI
Yep.
produced content. It is content that was created by our team and then just essentially formatted by AI.
Yep.
So that's probably been maybe the biggest win from a software standpoint, and in internal tooling that we've built. Yeah.
And just as a snapshot, I mean, like, what's the shape of Finsweet today? Like, how many people are you guys? Are there any? I mean, you're based out of Florida, is that right? Or you were
Yes.
at some point?
Yep. Still in Florida.
Okay, cool,
So we're about 45 people, I think,
cool.
in total. And there's really two sides to the business. The majority of the team is on the agency side, and then we do
Mm.
have a smaller group that kind of runs our product side of the business. And one kind of funny thing is, about a year and a half ago, we actually realized that because of all the content that we put out around
Yeah.
products, a lot of people in the space started to think that we were like kind of transitioned out of agency work and maybe just
Mm.
exclusively produce products. So that was a funny thing to find out. Obviously, we fixed a lot of that messaging kind of going into, middle of last year or so.
Okay.
And yeah, so the team is about, I would say, at least 2/3, maybe more, on the agency where we're providing services for clients, working with companies, and then we have a smaller group on the product side, actually building out tooling.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we're, uh, similar in terms of shape and size and
Hmm.
similar in terms of structure, but we have a dedicated product team now. Um, and then, but the bulk of our work has been on the services side. Um, and I'm curious, like you're focused on sales,
Hmm.
correct? So you're kind of
That's
like
right.
tip of the spear, in doing some of that discovery and context building, as you would say, around like what is a customer's problem, what they're trying to accomplish and solve for. I'm sure we could probably have a whole call just on because people always ask like around like, oh, how do you do pricing and like what do you, is there
Yeah,
anything that just within a couple minutes that you would share with people that are, maybe stumbling with how to scope or,
sure.
how to think about now without also without kind of revealing any like, you know, locked secrets or anything.
Totally.
Because we've pitched against each other. Like that's one of the things
Yeah,
that I think
many
is
times.
really, yeah, many
Yeah.
times. And I think is also really special about the Webflow community, at least it, as we've grown up. I think there's some things
Mhm.
that I can see shifting that are concerning. but that there has always been a collaborative spirit. And so I'm just
Totally.
curious for you on for people that are maybe out there, like what are the ways in which you start to build rapport, or what are the things that you've seen where, you try to just like connect and understand and go from there.
Yeah, totally. I think first of all, I'll mention as almost maybe a disclaimer, we are incredibly fortunate to have a brand in the
Yep.
Webflow space that has been
Yep.
recognized. And so that in and itself does do a lot of service for us.
Yeah.
Um, and then, and I think you guys are maybe in the same boat. Like
Yep.
Edgar Allan has become a name in the space for sure. Um, Now, once we get on a call with somebody, it's not, as you know, it's not a guaranteed deal
Yep.
to
Yep.
close it. We lose a lot of deals.
Same.
Um,
Same. I mean, I think that's one of the
yeah,
things I think you have to have a high sort of acceptance and tolerance for is just no, like just being told no
yeah,
a lot.
yeah, and then
So yeah.
ask like, okay, like help me understand why.
Yeah.
So that's maybe a tip, but I think fundamentally from a maybe an approach standpoint, how we look at sales, how we operate in sales, um, is we're just trying to be as helpful as possible.
Mhm.
And I
Yep.
almost look at the conversations that we're having with potential clients as more of a service to um, kind of help them understand their project and then
Yes.
educate them on how Finsweet could help them deliver that
Yep.
project.
Yep.
I'm not, I rarely go into a conversation trying to convince anyone of anything.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that just takes a lot of the pressure off, honestly.
Yeah.
So I'll go into a conversation and very quickly I'll just give kind of a quick overview of who Finsweet is, some of the stuff that we've just talked about
Mhm.
structurally, how do we function, where do we sit in the space, etc. And then the whole time I'm just asking questions,
Mm.
trying to uncover what is this project? Why do they want to do this project? Why do they want to do it now? Who's involved? What are the things that are in play? What are the marketing efforts that are around this thing? Um, and oftentimes, you may have seen this as well in conversations. You might ask questions by being, interested. You might ask questions that they haven't even thought about yet, and
Yep.
start to uncover things for them. Um,
Yes.
and I think we've won deals, to be honest, just because we asked more questions
Yes.
um,
Yep.
and helped them see their project more clearly than in the conversation they had with another agency.
Yep.
So I think that's a really, really good thing to start with is just be as helpful as possible. Try to
Mhm.
deeply understand their problem, what they're trying to solve, how everything fits in, who's involved. And then the rest of it is really just, okay, I'm going to do my best to articulate how Finsweet will, in a clear way, how does
Yep.
Finsweet come into play? How does Finsweet actually deliver what you're trying to do?
Yep.
So
Yeah. I
yeah,
think
I think that's it.
yeah, no, I fully agree with that. And um I think there's a misnomer that sales should be sort of high pressure or it's about a
Mhm.
trick or it's about something where you're, using these psychological tactics or something on,
Right.
whatever. And there is some stuff to be said around maybe pattern breaking and,
Mhm.
things like that. But just being curious and helpful is absolutely the best way. And I would say really for even, starting in sales, but anyone in brand and marketing as well, like a company should be curious and helpful to whoever they're working with. And then absolutely when it's coming to like the sales process and jumping on and talking with someone, just almost if a customer can leave a call where they like say something like, I know very little about Edgar Allan, but I feel like they could absolutely solve our question, our
Mhm.
problem, right? So that they
Mhm.
have almost like talked through this themselves and then been able to understand what they really need to be able to do. And then it's like, oh, now we actually have to go and, you know, provide to them more of like our formal response or, almost
Totally.
after the fact. Um,
Totally.
and so, yeah, I kind of work along in those similar lines.
That's awesome.
Um, and I'm curious now to sort of shift gears. All right. So, building tools, sort of one off and overall processes, and thinking about how to have the full team add context to what you guys are putting out there in the market. And I love, man, I saw someone threw out a heart for the idea of your content hub.
Yeah,
That sounds really awesome. And
it's cool. Yeah, it's really
I
cool.
saw someone from the Webflow team today had posted something on, they built what looks like a dam, and I was like, man, just ship the thing, like whatever it is, it's going to be better than
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
Um, how are you seeing the work sort of externally, right? Like
Hmm.
what are you seeing in terms of, project types and delivery, and, you know, is it just, you know, Claude builds where it's one prompt and done? Like what's the sort of shape of the web and projects that you're seeing look like?
Yeah. I think it depends on the client, but most of the companies and the teams that we tend to work with, um, they're coming to us because they want a marketing site.
Yep.
And what's behind that is they want to drive something. They want to
Mhm.
drive revenue, they want to drive growth. Um, and so, you're essentially trying to help them solve that problem
Mhm.
in the form of this website. And I
Yep.
think there's a lot of conversation, as you know, around, you know, what tooling do I use? Do I still use Webflow? Do I use these other products? Which we can get into that. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, still people still need they still need the marketing site.
Yep.
I think where we're seeing a lot of shift in terms of what the marketing teams need is we're starting to see a lot of them ask, okay, and this is something we ask too on sales
Mhm.
calls, by the way. We'll
Sure.
ask, hey, how are you anticipating to incorporate agentic development or agentic workflows into your own marketing workflows,
Yeah.
and your marketing efforts? And, you know, understanding that and what kind of things they want to do helps you kind of start to decide, okay, here's how we're going to build this thing. Here's where we need to be able to plug into certain tools and kind of stuff, that kind of thing. So I think that's the biggest shift
Mhm.
is just seeing how much AI has impacted marketing,
Mhm.
and as a result, seeing how we build and how we approach a new website, a marketing
Yep.
website, for those teams. I'm curious,
Yeah.
do you guys see the same thing? And yeah, what kind of signals are you guys getting?
I think something that's interesting that we've started to see is previously we might have a customer that shows up with, you know, a mood board or a Figma file or something along
Mm,
those lines. And recently we've had some people that have basically vibe coded a whole, you know, landing page or a couple pages of a
totally.
site or things along those lines, or maybe even launched that. But they've come back and said, I launched it, but then I tried to make an update and then it all fell apart. Or like I was able to get to like, 80%, but this last 10 to 20% is like really driving me nuts.
Yeah,
Um, so I think we're seeing more almost like these prototypes,
totally.
which is interesting. I think we have seen at times maybe the misconception of what it means to build for the
Hmm.
web, which is, as you said, like these are, brand and marketing initiatives that happen to look like a website at the other side, but that's not really where they should stop. Like they should
Hmm.
stop at how we're driving revenue and visibility for a company. And the medium to do that just is divided up into these pages and meta tags and like semantic, like whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but I think there can be a misconception of like, oh, well, why can't we just like like vibe code it in a weekend, or like this seems like it's going to take too long, or things like that.
Yeah.
um for us, we our projects go from strategy, design, build, content, and then optimization. It's a 14 to 16 week project. And, there's a lot of work that I I've often said, especially when we've been doing Webflow work, is that the build is the easy part. Not to
Hmm.
say that the build is necessarily easy, but at that point we've
Right.
answered a lot of the hard questions that a company is wrestling with, right? So
Hmm.
we can know what the hard things that we need to work on, but how a company is going to go to market, or how they're going to get internal alignment, or decide upon, a mission
Totally.
that they all
Totally
want
agree.
to believe in, like that's the hard thing. And I can't remember who said it. I think it was Ogilvy, talking about advertising in the 50s, which was like, it'd be a great business if it wasn't for the clients. And that's the thing, where it's like getting them to understand their business so that we can sort of help them, and do our business is,
Totally agree.
what we see a lot of.
Yeah, and I think another answer to your initial question, like what's shifting in the web right now,
Yeah.
I think at least in our context, there's because of agentic development, because development is getting quote unquote easier, um, teams are less concerned,
Yeah.
or maybe they're less, I don't know, stressed is maybe a bad word for it, but
Sure.
they're they are less focused on the build because it's a lot easier, and they're more focused on what happens after that. I think
Yep.
in our space, a lot of the focus for years has been we build really great web
Yep.
experiences.
Yep.
But now that has almost become or is becoming a commodity. And now it's, the companies that are going to stand out are the ones that can grow a really great website.
Yep.
So I think that's a big shift that I've seen at least.
How is Finsweet responding to that? Right. So kind of
Yeah.
moving, beyond the build and
Yeah. So I think, one of the things we're adding is a bit deeper of a service for SEO and AEO.
yep.
And then just supporting as much as possible the addition of things like A/B testing
Yep.
and personalization on page and things like that. Those are the biggest areas I think we're leaning into at the moment.
Mm.
I think this is a grow your website is such a wide gamut.
Yeah.
So
Oh
there's
my
so many
gosh.
different areas you could lean into.
Yeah.
But I think those are kind of the two big pieces that we're focusing on at least right now, and we'll probably expand in the future. How about you guys?
Yeah. Yeah, it's similar. And the way that I've tried to explain it to customers is that the I don't know, the aperture of the web has just really, really expanded,
Mm,
whereas for a long time it was like, oh, you would have your brand agency and they would hand off a PDF, and then you would have, your website, and then you would have your PR and your paid media, and like all, and everyone sort of like in your SEO, and that all worked in these different silos. And now it's like what's kind of everything. And it's about what's being said on the site as well as off site, and how kind of like owned, earned, and paid media are all working together.
hmm
So one of the questions I'm asking is like, one, what is it that we're going to do that can really be a world-class offering? And then who else do we partner with? Because we don't have a PR arm, right? But
Totally.
PR is really important. And so how do we go through and build out that relationship with a group where, we can say, hey, we need to have visibility in these types of ways or in these areas, um, and have some groups that we can lean on, or go back
hmm
and forth with. And so that's probably the next thing that we're looking at. Um, we've uh, we've been building out we call it a performance and visibility group for the last few years. I will say, man, it is such a different game, and it is like, man, I don't know the best way to say this, but like really boring and technical, and so incredibly important and impactful. Like a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff that we will work on, whether it's just like getting GA4 to not fight with OneTrust, or whatever kind of itty bitty little thing that needs to happen so that we can have clear data, so that we can make
hmm
the right
hmm
recommendations, so that we can dig into what's happening in, Hotjar or Webflow Optimize or
Right.
Profound or like whatever. And it's very much a sort of stitching a lot of these pieces together.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not like, and at the end of it, you're like delivering a very specific recommendation, but it's not like we have, um, we can talk about the impact that we've made, but it's not like, oh, we have this great thing, or
Yeah,
sometimes you can't, right? Because you sometimes
totally.
have these contracts where you can't, talk about like such specific numbers. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
very
think that's
interesting.
the area where it's just how to manage through the expanded aperture of what the web means, and then
Mhm.
how to build a company to be able to support that.
Totally. And I think, one thing that we're starting to explore is, what things can we create, whether that
Mhm.
be in our products or in our services, that would be proprietary to an
Yep.
experience of working with Finsweet.
Yep.
So I'd be really curious to hear what you guys are doing too, if you're willing to share. But one of the things I mentioned, the content hub that our marketing team
Yep.
is using, we're working on building that out so that every client of Finsweet would have access to that and be able to
Oh,
run their
cool.
content engine through this product.
Huh.
Um, and so that would be almost like, hey, this is another really awesome reason to work with
Oh,
Finsweet, is you get
yeah.
access to this really cool platform. So we're exploring ideas like that, and because AI has opened up the window for, speed and just the
Yep.
ability to build so much,
Yep.
what are some creative ways we can build some things into the experience of working with Finsweet that would separate us from, other teams in the space?
Yeah, and I think that's something that's pretty special about the scene that we've grown up in, where there's just oh, hope hope my wife's okay. She just dropped something. But I think it's something that's kind of special about the scene that we've grown up in, where there is a natural proclivity to want to not just build, but build tooling around how we build.
Yeah.
And you guys have done a ton of that. We've done some of that. Like we've have Slater and Wes, and we have
Hmm.
some other things that we're launching. Um, I think one of the next challenges that we're seeing, like I was just talking with Chesley, he's building a what is it? Comment management tool for Figma, because right
Okay,
now it's
cool.
like you go through and you can just like you just get blasted by all these comments in a Figma file. And there's not a way to sort of prioritize or sort or say if something is closed, or if even like they shouldn't add comments on the wireframe pages because we've already finished those, but we don't,
Mm,
it's like it just becomes like this wild west. And so over the course of a few sort of like weekends and nights and in between lunches and whatever, he was able to kind of build out a prototype. And then we've now been able to harden that, and we're expanding that out through the um, the team today. But it's a way for us to very clearly manage feedback. We have this sort of ethos of like being wildly collaborative, like everybody
mhm.
in the pool. But
That's
how do
cool.
you go through and manage and create some swim lanes so that like everyone isn't just like drowning each other in comments?
Yeah,
And so that's where
it's a
we've been
great
focused.
analogy.
Yeah. Oh, I've got lots of analogies. Just wait.
That's awesome.
Growing up in the South, all it is analogies. So, but yeah, I
Incredible.
love the idea what you guys are putting together with a content hub. Is that how does that relate to like a content management system?
It would basically plug in. So if they're
Okay,
on Webflow, for example, then and we use this ourselves. This is like
cool.
something we're actively doing, as a team ourselves. We would just plug that directly into Webflow, and you could connect via MCP or whatever,
Cool.
and push content. And then, social accounts is just a little bit of a different workflow.
Mm,
I think the team is working potentially on, more native integrations there, but yeah, it kind of plugs into whatever CMS you're already using.
cool. So it's almost like I'm trying to make the maybe like a Hootsuite type of thing where I don't know if you remember like this back in the day. It was,
A
we're
little bit, yeah.
managed, Twitter posts and Instagram posts, but broader probably around like, what's I'm sure there's some process stuff that you guys would have in there, maybe approvals, like, and then where it's
Hmm.
going to push to, and how
Yep.
to be able to have like a source of truth for assets. And man,
Yeah.
yeah, Um,
Brand voice management, all of that
yep,
kind of stuff is included. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
amazing. Well, let's jump in on the product side because you guys are so prolific with your product work. And I was actually, I'm pulling together an article on like agencies that have created apps for the Webflow app marketplace,
Hmm.
and you guys are right there at the top. You've done. I think there's like 4 different apps in the marketplace. Um, what like where are your app like where are you guys focusing and where are you not focusing? So just give
Yeah.
me a snapshot because everything
Yeah.
from attributes, client first, Wized, have Consent Pro, there's always something that I feel like you guys are building and launching, and now some, a content hub, on the horizon.
Hmm. Yeah.
So give me the rundown.
Yeah, yeah. This has candidly been one of the areas that we've felt the most distribution in, or
Okay.
the most disruption in.
Okay.
I misspoke. And so we were talking briefly before this, but basically, agentic development has opened up the opportunity for a lot of people to build some of this stuff themselves,
Yep.
or at least like maybe lower fidelity, personalized
Sure.
solutions.
Yep.
Um, and so we've basically come to the conclusion, the product team has, that we are going to focus pretty much all of our effort from a product standpoint into one product that can be used on Webflow, but can also be used off of Webflow.
Cool.
Um, and as I'm sure you guys have seen, a hot topic right now is Webflow still good? Which I
Yep.
think yes. The answer is yes. We can get into that if you want. But there's been clear disruption in the space, and we've seen the impact of that on our side. So we're leaning into Consent Pro, which is we think it has a great future,
Yep.
and it's a tool that we could easily make platform agnostic, which is a win-win for everyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we're going to lean into that. We're not deprecating anything. So
Okay.
things, that people are really leaning on, like attributes and client
Yep.
first and these other tools,
Yep.
they're still going to continue to exist and they're not going anywhere. But we're just going to really focus in our efforts on growing Consent Pro from the product side of the business.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the biggest shift on
Cool.
products right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so we launched Slater in 2023, I believe it was. And it was it's funny. It was sort of vibe coding before there was vibe coding, but
Right.
it was a JavaScript management platform that happened to have AI sort of attached to it. And we still have a healthy, group of people that are using that. But we have seen a decline, in
Hmm.
the sort of just usage of that product, which is great. I feel like in some ways, we built that to solve one of our own problems, which is managing
Totally.
JavaScript and Webflow has been not great. This, goes a long way to help to make that better. But we have also looked at okay, what are the things that we're going to dig into next? How do we have something that's going to help the agency have very unique IP, but then
Right.
also can be something where it's a yes and, right? Because there's
Hmm.
so many different ways to build. And even when we're working on Webflow, a lot of times we'll be doing something where we're doing a partial migration. Or we will have a reverse proxy that's going, and it might be like we're coming over from Drupal and moving over to Webflow, and we've got 1,000 pages over here and 1,000 pages over here, and so having something that can be multi-platform is
Hmm.
almost like a must right now. Also, just
Totally.
like what even is a platform today, and you can basically spit out just HTML. So
Yeah.
I want to do 2 things. One, I want to dig into what is the reality of building and your views on Webflow. But first, I'd love to dig in on Consent Pro. And this has been something that grew out of cookie consent.
Hmm.
I can't remember, was that what it was called? It was called cookie consent or what?
I think it was very, very
It was just
simply
like a
just
really
named cookie consent.
straightforward,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, And I remember when it launched, I think around 2021, something along those lines. And it was a different, I don't know, it was just a very different type of product than I would have expected from Finsweet. And yet, something that everyone sort of needs. And then you have these massive companies like OneTrust or, whoever. I mean,
Mhm.
the consent environment is competitive. So
Yeah.
let's get into why this product, and then what
Mhm.
is about this product that makes it special?
Yeah, I think the why is pretty easy, and it's kind of the story with most of the products that we've built. And really, it's just we learn a lot in our
Mhm.
services work on the agency
Yep.
side, and then we see a repeated problem over and over and
Yep.
over again. There are a lot of products that we kind of just used on our own for a long
Mm.
time. Like,
Yep.
client first, for example, is something that's pretty widely used now. Attributes is the same kind of story arc where we just needed a solution to work a little bit faster together as a team and be able to hand projects off to each other.
Yep.
And so we created this class naming convention. And then initially that was just a solution that was only used internally at our team.
Mhm.
And then we thought it was good enough and helpful enough to open up to everyone. So now anyone can use it. And that's like one of our free products.
Cool.
Um,
And Client
Consent
First is
Pro,
open source now, is that right?
yes, I believe so. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Same with
I remember
attributes.
when that there was like a um sort of a consortium or panel that was put together, and it was
hmm
cool to see that
Yeah, the
sort
guys
of
over at Reloom
migrate.
are
Yeah.
on that, and yep, yeah, yeah, yeah. So attributes and client first are both free, open source. They'll continue to exist and are awesome. Um, so Consent Pro was similar. It was, hey, we're starting to see a lot of people care about consent. They need it for legal reasons, and we just want a good solution that our team can have as we're building websites for our
Mhm.
clients. Um, and having a history of launching products, we immediately saw the opportunity to create something that could be
Mhm.
paid and hand out to teams. So that was kind of the why. And I think the opportunity is, a lot of our other products are very specifically solving problems that are unique to Webflow.
Mhm.
Whereas Consent Pro is a bit more agnostic, as I've said. You know, any website on the internet is going to need consent at
Yep.
some point, depending on how big the company is. Um, and so it was just a kind of a marriage of both of those. One, it's a great tool because it's solving something that's everyone's going to need, and then two, it's a problem that's not necessarily unique to just Webflow.
Mhm.
Other platforms and other tech stacks are also going to be able to use this.
So and I'm, by the way, just really excited with what you
Mhm.
guys are building in terms of Consent Pro and seeing that evolution, because it's not just something that you've, again, new to. Like, this is
Totally.
really, you've had a lot of experience here, and I think that gives me a lot of trust. And for this, what makes it specific to Webflow? Like, what are the things that are unique within Webflow that make this the right choice? Generally, for a long time now, we're, you know, uh, very interested in being able to help guide our customers onto Consent Pro. Um, we've just said, like, hey, go and research this yourself. We want to have, no
Totally.
say in this decision, because this is almost a legal decision that needs to happen. But yeah, what are the things that, and if you, by the way, we have time if you want to give a demo or, show anything off or anything like that. I know I actually didn't talk about a demo ahead of time, so I'm just like
That's okay.
wild carding this. But like, let's talk about like what is unique to Webflow, and then I would imagine that anything that's unique to Webflow is also sort of universal for other platforms.
Yeah, I think first of all, I'm pasting the link in the chat here, so
Okay,
anyone can kind of go for that. The second thing I'll mention is the team. When I mentioned that I would be on with you today, they did produce a discount code. So anyone in
cool.
your kind of audience who wants to get 30% off on their first implementation of Consent Pro, there's the code Edgar 30.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Um, Yes, well branded. So we
Perfect. Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, the thing that makes it um, particularly good on Webflow is the native experience.
Hmm.
So we've built a lot into, you know, being able to control all of this within the designer and not having to go out into another tool. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the biggest thing. You know, that's probably one of the bigger, if we think about Webflow's own products, they've launched products like Optimize, for example,
Yeah.
um, that there are other options.
Yep.
Localize is another one.
Yep.
Analyzer. These are all great examples of you can go use another option. There's
Yeah.
great tools on the market, but one of the big separators is the fact that you're just going to be already in Webflow
Yep.
when you're using this. So I think that's one of the big things, and it just makes it a really easy experience. Which especially today, as people are moving faster and faster, um, the easiness of the experience is definitely important. But I
So
won't give a demo today only
okay.
because
Well, let's
I
do it.
don't want to do it a disservice. I think people on our product
Perfect.
team, we actually have, I think, some content on our YouTube channel
Okay.
around Consent Pro. So if you guys are interested, go there. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us as well. So we'd be
Cool.
happy to provide answers to questions or even
Yep.
advice on where to run in this lane.
Yeah. And might even just have to do a deep dive there because, um, the one of the things is like how to, um, y- I'd be really curious on, and this is something we'll look at maybe at another time, but like structure contracts for an agency so that you're being specific around what you're, um, recommending, and then the types of, you know, responsibilities that you're asking for the legal team on the other
Mhm.
team to really, make sure that they're paying attention to. Now, are you guys managing this through a Webflow app, or is this a Chrome extension? Like, how do people get it inside of Webflow?
That is actually a really good question. We've grown a lot, the product a lot in the last, probably 6 to 12 months. So I probably shouldn't give too much,
Okay.
just because I might give you the wrong information,
Yep.
not because we're hiding anything here.
Sure. Sure.
Um, so yeah, I would encourage anyone who has questions about it, shoot our team, a message, and you can find me on X or LinkedIn. And the Consent Pro website is a good resource, and then we have
Yep.
some content around it on YouTube as well.
Awesome. Well, let's jump over now to just like building in Webflow
Hmm.
and, this narrative that's out there of like, hey, I vibe coded something and, I'm deploying it into Sanity or whatever. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you see? Like, how are you working? I'll just first start. I mean, like, we're Webflow is our primary CMS and deployment tool. We have looked at, some other, options like every once in a while we'll peel back like, all right, what's WordPress doing? And they're like, oh no, 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 we shut that door really quickly. And then we've looked at Sanity, but I think from there it's like it's a very different operating model for us.
Hmm.
And so um how are you working? What do you see as the reality?
Hmm.
And like, what is the what does that mean for Finsweet today?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, we've all seen a lot of the conversation that's happening online, especially as these other tools have gotten really good.
Mhm.
Um, and I think Webflow gets a lot of unnecessary hate in this
Mhm.
conversation,
Yep.
if I'm being honest. And I think where people tend to go wrong in this conversation, where, the conversation of where does Webflow sit in regards to agentic development? Is it a good tool? Should I continue to use it for my website, etc.? Um, is a lot of people who we see online, or at least that I'm seeing online, are coming in. with a perspective of it has to be either or.
Yep.
So they're kind of cutthroat with it. They're saying, okay,
Yep.
I'm yeah, we see a lot of I'm getting rid of my Webflow account. I just migrated off of Webflow. I'm done with Webflow. All this kind of stuff, and I think that's the wrong take. If I'm being honest,
Yep.
I think that if you're smart and and of course this totally depends on the type of client,
Sure.
and the size of company that you're serving. Of course, there's
Yep.
some nuance to this. But I think that the companies and the individuals who are approaching this in a smart way are coming from a perspective of both and instead of
Mhm.
either or.
Mhm.
And they are essentially making sure they're solving the problem for their clients and choosing the best technology to do that.
Exactly.
So that at the end of the day is really what it's about. It's not, hey, I'm going to make an alliance on one side of the fence or the other. It's, hey, my loyalty is to my client and I'm going to use the best tool possible to solve their problem, the one that's the most appropriate for their problem. And I think that Webflow in a lot of ways is still the best option for the clients that we're working with. I think one of the reasons people get negative in this conversation is they, it's funny. Webflow hasn't gotten worse as a product in the last 3 to 6 months, right?
No.
They haven't gotten worse, but all of a sudden they're getting like hate around the features of the product.
Yep.
And I think it's because people misappropriate the success of other products
Mhm.
compared to Webflow's own addition in the last 3 to 6 months.
Mm.
Um, and when we instead of getting mad at Webflow, we should just be excited that there are these other really cool tools that we get to tap into. So that's my own kind of like
Yeah.
soapbox take on the
No,
conversation. But I
I
think,
yeah, I fully
uh,
agree with that. And I think there's also sort of a hype cycle of through being negative, trying to attach attention
mhm,
to maybe an individual or a new product or a new take
right,
of like, oh, you know, I'm setting the world on fire or like, disrupting whatever. And it's
totally,
like, that's fine. But I mean, is this the reality? And
yeah,
I think for what you're talking about, it should be like a yes and or a better together or however you want to frame it. And that the ability to go and create something quickly is the floor. And Dan from Reloom had just talked about this, which I fully agreed with. It's
mhm,
like this is the floor, it is not the ceiling,
yeah,
and that
totally,
now it's a question on how are we building something that is going to be compelling, interesting? How are we scaling out systems and content and
right,
attention so that people can be found and chosen? Right. So I
yeah,
think that's the real mix here, and being able to do that at scale, which is still very hard because you have
that's important, yeah,
you know teams that today are coming from such bloat and legacy systems where, I mean, even getting, like roles and permissions working in Webflow for them, like that's a big effort, right? There's like
yeah,
Fig Jam boards and like all this stuff on like, okay, well, you're going to do this and it's going to be
yeah,
approved here. And then someone needs to comment and whatever. And being like, okay, cool. Now just like have a Claude skill that's going to like, it, it's not reality. Now, on
yeah,
the flip side, to something, we had talked about before we jumped on, um, there's a lot of opportunity to build things that just wouldn't be there
mhm,
to begin with. And I think that's
totally,
what's exciting. And I think that's the area where it's like, yeah, you know what? For a lot of what maybe was out there, where previously maybe someone would have started with a template or maybe would have struggled through to get something that looks okay in Webflow and
mhm,
taken like way too long and just been able to build something for an interior designer or a barbershop or like whatever that might be, that is probably better, like served as sort of a one shot or, something along those lines. And you had even said that you had built something for your barber. I
mhm,
haven't built anything for my barber in a while. But like I could imagine like, your barber would be very excited with whatever you would build. Um, and this is something that I think is fantastic, right?
mhm,
This is the era of democratizing the web so that more people can go through and build these things. And by the way, what the business model starts to look like is actually really where, there is, I think, the model that you and I work in, which is how to help enterprise teams
Hmm.
get more done, right? And shorten that distance between idea and execution. That's the
Right.
value that we bring. And then there's another model of this, which is like almost a website as a service, where it's like, hey, maybe for that, small business, like the lawn care company, like I think it's most of America is made up of small businesses. There's so much opportunity there. And offering that as website as a service or sort of basically a managed service, like that's the play. And that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that like, rip down what was over here in Webflow and be like, oh my gosh, it's like uh, I posted on Twitter last week. It feels like the meme from Portlandia. The dude that like just goes around and he's like, that's over, like shell
Right.
art is over, and it's
Yeah.
like that's the sort of attitude. And I can't disagree with that more, because while yes, there are wildly exciting things and work that Webflow needs to do, and if I was to have a
Totally.
sneaky suspicion, probably is doing that,
100%.
uh, there there are more ways in which this should be embraced instead of less.
Totally. Yeah. So very practically at Finsweet, what we're doing is we are kind of embracing both options.
Yep.
Um, we still see Webflow as kind of the go-to option for most of our client work. And then there have been examples recently where we're building like a web app, for example.
Yep.
Agentic development is really, really good now.
Yep.
And if you have the right team around it who are building in a smart way, you can build an awesome product with agentic development. And so
Yep.
we've built a handful of kind of like Next.js, React projects
Yep.
for our clients. And so we're not throwing Webflow out the window. We're just kind of embracing this new tech that's available, this new workflow. And I think the bet we're also making, which you kind of hinted at this, is that um, you know, Webflow is full of smart people, right?
Mhm.
Their team, I don't know how much they're worth as a company, but they're worth a lot of money. They have a lot of very smart people. I'm
Yep.
sure they're not waking up in the morning and saying like, "Oh, let's make a really terrible agentic product for
Yeah.
everyone."
Yeah.
Like they're not trying to like shoot everyone in the foot.
Yep.
Um, and so they're probably, as you mentioned, going out and solving a lot of the problems that these or solving a lot of the solutions really that these other tools have now started to solve.
Yep.
Um, and I would guess the bet we're making is that, come, WebflowConf or somewhere around there, they're going to announce some insanely cool features that are going to be awesome for a lot of our clients and unlock some things.
Yep.
And what's unfortunate is all of the people online that are trashing Webflow right now are essentially shooting themselves in the foot because then they're going to have to turn around and be like, oh, okay, Webflow is really cool again.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's funny. But that's kind of the bet we're making is that,
Yep.
Webflow sees this just like we see it.
Yep.
They're a bunch of really smart people too.
Yep.
And they're probably building something great that's going to be really, really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if I was to, the snapshot here is like, yes, like today, the best solution that we have that we bring to our clients, which again is a lot of like, we're working in Profound, we're working in Webflow, we're working in Consent Pro, like all
Hmm.
these different, it is a stack of
Yeah.
platforms that we are using to help manage processes and people to drive to outcomes. There are things that we're building as well, like you had talked about, where we're working on a project right now. We built a reverse proxy management tool and QA system so that as
Yeah.
we're kind of managing, sort of a split deployment, that we could see what the reality was. And yeah, I think that that's what is the sort of exciting and next step. And so like that's all like check, check, check. Yes, that's what's happening. And then I think for us too, I'm very excited for WebflowConf that, you know, for for I think both of our companies, we believed not just in what the product features that were on the website, but understanding that there are incredibly like, I mean, it was seeing a video from Sergi, back in 2015, and I was like, I just like Sergi, right? It is a smart group of people
Yeah.
that are driven, that love to build for the web. Shout out to Nathan and Ben Parker and just like so many people that
Yeah.
have really helped to shape a lot of this new way of building. And now that the aperture of the web is expanding, it's like, okay, we've all got to like expand what we do and then
Hmm.
find ways to like create shortcuts for all the stuff that, has has been a functional barrier, right? We were just like, oh no, there was no way that we could go and create, this. But now we can.
Hmm.
And so just in kind of closing, I know we're kind of coming up on time. Make sure I think we've got a couple questions that came through.
Yeah. Look
Um,
here.
so, and I think Stefan had maybe asked one about client first. Just kind of going through. Um, well, how about this? We just have a few minutes. Let me give you a chance to maybe round out this. You know, what are the things that you're kind of thinking of, like if we were to check back in a year that you really want Finsweet to be known for?
Hmm. It's a good question. Candidly, that's something we're talking about a lot right now,
Mm.
and deciding, w- from a messaging standpoint, in a lot of ways, what areas do we want to lean into. Um, I think at the end of the day, we'd love to be known as a partner who is extremely helpful and can um, help discern the market a little bit,
Uh-huh.
uh, help partners decide what tech they should be using, and then ultimately come through and help them drive results.
Yep.
So, it's not nothing crazy, but I think, that would be a big win. Would be, you know, we want to be really helpful. We want to
Mhm.
be extremely knowledgeable, and we want to actually drive results for our clients. So, yeah, how about you guys?
Well, first off, I just want to say like that I think that you guys have lived those values and for a long time. And so I think that amplifying that in the market is something that's really exciting, and that there is this crop of agencies that have come up through Webflow, which I feel like are incredibly well suited for this next version of the web. You
Totally
guys are at
agree.
the top of this list. And I see it as a vertically integrated product and solution type of offering
Hmm.
where we're um and I'd say if I was to look out at what I want to see in a year, I think it's really also coming back to where we were founded, which is help companies have a great story. And by having a great story, it's first listening, and then understanding, and then articulating, and then learning. Like those are the steps that we go through within a customer. Um, but really stepping up into a larger stage where, it's like I think both of our companies are growing, and
Mm,
that there is space. There's so many of these like really bad, I don't know, like omni-channel WPP, like what, like I'm not just picking on WPP and their agency network, but like I kind of am, right? I feel like they get really big and a little bit lazy, and they charge a lot of money, and then they have a lot of layoffs, and just like the whole
yeah,
cycle is not great. And I hope for Edgar Allan and Finsweet that, we're able to make a bigger and bigger dent within the web space and kind of
totally.
continue to grow up alongside of these brands that are trying to go and address really complicated things that are happening in the web. So
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
where
Yeah, I mean, at the end of
I,
the day, it's like, I think we could all say, one of the things that gets us the most excited is when we hear from a client that, we unlocked something or help them do something that they just wouldn't have been able to do without us. So yeah, I think it all comes down to something around that.
amazing. Well, let's end on that note, Jesse. And I just want to say this conversation has been really helpful, and just love being able to go through and catch up with you. I've seen you on, on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we've been overdue for talking. And so maybe one other plug to put out there, and something that we should put out into the world, is we were just talking about how Jesse and I love to run. And so if you love to run and you want to go on a run with us
Yes.
at WebflowConf, like, we're going to do it. We're going to put together a run. So Boston, it won't be 26.2 miles, but we can go and put something fun together.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. And yeah, we will talk soon. So thanks, Jesse. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you guys.